to make tonight because Sarah's reminded me anyway that things have to be at the village clerk's office on Monday to be on time for the public hearing June 2nd. So, yeah, that's what we were going to do. Item one there you can see is just to kind of review the timeline, but it's really, uh, this meeting getting ready for the public hearing. And then the public hearing on June 2nd. Um, and then everything published, everything up online and so on. The goal is Monday. And correct me on that, Sarah. I think you were saying the goal is Monday.
Yeah, so I mean that's the deadline. I would prefer Friday just so there's,
Yeah,
some
yeah,
wiggle room. But Monday is the drop dead date.
yep. Okay. And we've already done a flyer for promotion. And then after at the end too, if we'll get to this in a moment. After the last slide, if we do a slideshow, the last slide gets into how some suggestions on how the public hearing. I mean, you run so many of these, you don't need any suggestions from us, but just a couple of suggestions on that. And then after the hearing, we have that meeting June 4th with the commission, and that's where you'd have to make any final decisions based on comments you hear at the public hearing. That would be the meeting to make any changes. We would then make changes, and you'd be in a position, we hope then, on June 23rd, where you could move to adopt, or if you had to adopt with a revision or, a change at the last minute, although it's preferable to, be able to adopt as is on June 23rd. And you would meet state law, um, which is saying July 1 to have this in place. So, I guess any questions on the timeline or,
Mr.
okay.
Chairman, just a question, if I may. Do we need to do the roll call and all that?
For tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know, Sarah, do we?
I mean I've taken notes of who's here and who's not, but it doesn't really matter. We can.
Okay. No worries.
Okay. And then Suzanne, let me turn it to you a little bit. Do you want to do the just a debrief on the public workshop? We've gotten some key comments. You've gotten a public workshop summary from us with Sarah's assistance and the assistance of some of the commissioners. So we might want to just go through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We shared this with Sarah following the workshop. It begins with just a brief overview of what was said at the workshop, the presentation, further opportunities for public input, and then at the end, we have here a summary of key takeaways presented during the full group discussion. I think almost everyone was here, so was there. So I don't think I need to go through all of them, but maybe we could just have an opportunity to see if there's any reflections that the subcommittee has, if was anything that stood out to you. Our overall sense was that we were pleased with the turnout. I know that at our table in particular, the housing table, there was quite a few developers and they seemed, satisfied with the changes. I know there were some other tables that had similar conversations that most of the changes made sense. We talked about the zoning map, how some of those were mostly, cleaning up in addition to the consolidation of zones. But wanted to give a moment here for any further input from the commission. I can stop sharing my screen, or we can go through this summary if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
And I will just say that I think, after we have this, that document I sent out with the 14 or 15 things I think we need to go through, we'll do that after. So if you had something, if we had talked in the last day or so and there was something that I said we would talk about, we can do that after this. So if there's just anything that hasn't been documented that we need to talk about, I would start there.
That's
If
your
not,
discussion 'Discussion points' document?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Okay.
If not, that's okay too. We can move on. So like Sarah said, the next item on here, what what we wanted to address for the discussion point. So I can share my screen, but I don't know, Sarah, I know that we've had some back and forth internally to discuss some of these, but do you want to take the lead here and we can chime in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, what's the preference for everyone else? Do you have this in front of you? Because I don't know if it would be easier for a discussion if everyone can see each other instead of having
Mhm.
screen shared.
Yeah, that's fine.
Does everyone have that document
Yep.
handy?
Yep.
Okay. So I mean, we can just go line by line. So starting with the business districts, number one, healthcare professionals. Does everyone understand the healthcare professional definition and its distinction between medical offices?
Could you explain?
Yeah, so it was essentially meant in my recollection to be for your therapist, your psychiatrist, the more one-on-one type of medical services. Versus, your primary care where you're seeing a nurse and then there may be, a bunch of other support staff and whatnot. So those lower intensity medical uses. Um, we created that separate definition, but then in the use table, it ended up that we were treating healthcare professionals the same way as medical offices. And my understanding of the intent was that that way, that less intense medical use would be treated as general office. Just because, I don't know, does a therapist need the same amount of parking as an urgent care facility?
Do they have different parking rates?
They do.
Proposed to have different
Yeah,
parking
they're proposed to.
minimums.
And is that
Just
based
because if
on
we're,
is that based on like ITE or what's the rationale for different parking rates?
was that based on ITE, Suzanne?
Yeah, Frank, I know that you
Yeah,
talked to George about this in our office.
yeah, we did. And all of ours that we've given you are based on ITE.
So which one is more intensive in terms of the parking requirement?
Just
I
general.
I can, yeah, regular
office.
medical. But we can see, let me pull it up. We can compare if you want general office. Because your point, Sarah, is that it would be just general office, not medical office, correct?
Yeah, just because I don't think there's a need for a designation between the two if you're just treating it like medical office, because that's what we do right now.
So I have the parking standards here. So we're proposing that one space per 225 square feet of gross floor area for healthcare professionals. And then one space per 350 square feet of gross floor area for office and bank. So it is um slightly
Yeah,
more
it's
than the office. Yeah.
slightly more stringent for healthcare, right?
Yep, for healthcare professionals, yes, but
Right.
less stringent than medical office.
But closer in terms of, perceived intensity of medical office than to office and bank.
Yeah. And so
Yes, that's correct.
if we leave this as is, 112 Main Street, for example, if someone wants to open up a therapist's office above 112 Main Street on one of the upper floors, that will need a site plan application from the P and Z Commission, which to me is counterintuitive to what you all are trying to achieve.
So if you put healthcare professional as an office, it does not require site plan approval. But if
It
we
would
put
just
it
be
as
a zoning permit. It would just be a zoning permit.
but if we put it as a medical office, it's going to require site plan approval.
Yes, unless you want to change it for medical office too.
In
And
If I
the
think
use
about
table,
Elms,
for instance.
if I think about Elm Street, I mean, there are any number of mental health professionals who have offices on upper floors.
Yeah, it's allowed. It's just what process do you think is appropriate for getting that approval?
No, I take the point. There are quite a few, and they look like general offices. If you go
And
in,
remember, retail doesn't have any parking requirements, so
true.
why
True.
does it why what are you gaining by needing to approve a therapist going above a store on Elm Street or Forest Street versus staff just signing off on it?
I agree.
Does it have anything to do though with the size of the operation? Like to me, like a sole practitioner therapist is a different
No,
situation
so
Is a
than
different
group.
situation than Stretch Lab, for example, where they've got 6 therapists and 12 clients sitting in there.
yeah, so general office in the retail zone, anything under 10,000 square feet on an upper floor, you have that I can sign off on.
Oh, okay.
And then if it was larger than 10,000 square feet, it would go to you all
For business,
for retail.
for retail.
What about office?
That is general office.
General office.
And then medical offices in the retail zone on an upper floor has to go to you guys, no matter what, is how you have it written.
I'm sympathetic to the staff recommendation to treat it as general office. It seems to be that type of activity. I appreciate the distinction with medical offices where you may have a phlebotomist, you may have a nurse, and various other, may even have a medical secretary, which you may not necessarily have, let's say in a psychologist's office or a therapist's office.
Okay, so I guess a question for Dan to think about just for process as we go through the rest of these. As we make these decisions, do you want the subcommittee to vote officially or just straw poll, or are we having all of the commissioners vote to move forward on these things, or
Well, we're not going to have another forum in front of the rest of the commission, correct? Before this goes to public.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You really need to decide on all of these if you can tonight.
Yeah, I just mean for process of sticking a pin in it, who gets say?
Well, I mean, technically it should be the subcommittee that's been steering this thing the whole time, but we were looking to do a final review by the entire commission before going public with this. So I have no issue with us voting, as a full commission on this, or whoever we have on the phone. We have a pretty close to, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 of us, 9 of us on the phone.
Yeah.
So we can vote as a full body.
Okay.
And Sarah, could I ask a question here? Your item 1 has to do really with how you want them grouped and regulated, medical offices. So you would be doing this so that the healthcare professional is also treated as the medical office, right?
Treated as a general office.
As the
No, as a
general
general
sorry,
office.
Yeah,
as
correct,
general
yeah.
office.
Yeah.
So I want to differentiate that from the parking standards that Suzanne just went through. The
Yeah.
parking standards, which are ITE standards, would remain the same, unaffected.
Yes, that's what I'm
Yeah, okay.
recommending.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one?
So are you
Let's-
all generally in favor of that then? What Sarah's recommending, I think.
I am.
Yep,
Yeah.
I think that makes
Okay.
sense.
Great. So there we go.
Okay,
Great.
so we'll call that a vote because I mean
Well, why
these
don't
aren't
we,
official. I mean
why don't we
these
go?
aren't official votes. Just remember, so I don't think we should do like a true motion because these aren't appealable decisions. We don't want to inadvertently.
You want us to
Make-
all raise our hand? Because that doesn't require us to each turn on our mic and off our mic. You just call for a vote and we'll all just raise our hand if we agree. And then you get us.
Does that work for you, Dan?
That works. Yeah.
Okay.
So on item 1, we're going with defining or lumping healthcare professionals in with general office in the retail zone.
That's
Show of hands and support. We're there.
Great.
great.
Keeping the parking standards the same.
And
Correct.
keeping the parking
Yeah.
standards as is from ITE, right?
It's in the
Yeah.
retail and the business zone. By the way, the offices lumping together with healthcare professionals in both
Mhm.
zones.
Okay. So next one, wellness
Okay,
center
so yeah.
retail component requirement.
So it was pointed out in the retail zone, if you look at the conditions from the use table, that we distinguish between wellness centers and boutique fitness centers, which we did more so for the business zone because, I think your smaller boutique fitness center versus the Racket Club, which is 50,000 square feet or however big it is, should be treated differently. But in the retail zone, we still have them listed separately. And boutique fitness centers require a retail component, but wellness centers, we don't require a retail component. We just say that fitness activities are not permitted to be visible from windows at street level.
I
Was
think
that
they
an
should be
oversight or is that
I think they should be the
fine?
same.
Okay, for the retail zone, we should just say, like,
Yeah,
are
I
you
think-
saying only have
I
one
think
use or
Wellness
require?
centers and boutique fitness should be one and the same in terms of the requirements of, what's street front visibility.
Okay,
So could we just group together in the use table wellness centers and boutique fitness centers because they're both as of right with a zoning permit and just have one footnote?
in the retail zone, I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say
Retail
yes.
zone?
Yeah.
I would agree
Okay,
with
great.
Is
that.
the requirement look, if there's a building that's set back from the street significantly, does that requirement still
So
matter?
again, this is only for the retail zone and
Every zone. Okay, so I would
every
say
single building is on the
Right.
street line
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
retail zone.
But to your point, Eric, I mean, if back end changed from a bar to a fitness facility down that back alley, they wouldn't, because they're so far
Right.
back from the street line, they wouldn't require any kind of retail zone.
right. No, I mean I'm just from a philosophical standpoint. If the goal is to make sure that we activate the retail, the street frontages as retail, I just want to make sure that that's consistent and not making somebody who's, I guess it's not in the retail zone, it doesn't matter, more in the
Right.
business zone, but that's where I was
Yeah,
going.
so I mean, the language is a retail component must be visible from windows at street level. So
That's what's currently in for wellness centers, but the boutique fitness is,
Retail
so-
component, yeah, must be visible.
yeah, no, so wellness center says fitness activities are not permitted to be visible from windows at street level. Boutique fitness centers say a retail component must be visible from windows at street level.
well, we need to align them, and isn't there is it the 20-foot rule or the 20% floor area rule for the front area?
That's for personal service establishments, but I think we're
I mean-
combining the two, so we'll have whether we call it wellness center or boutique fitness center, we'll require a retail component and we'll make sure it's consistent with the personal service establishment retail component.
Okay.
Well, the personal service establishment, that has separate conditions. Are you proposing adding those conditions?
No, I just mean the minimum of 15 feet in depth,
So you want to add that to the,
that specifically, not the other stuff, but
okay. So the retail area must be a minimum of 15 feet in depth measured from exterior line or 20% of the total floor area, whichever is greater. Anything less than 15 feet in depth is subject to administrative approval.
I'm looking to the commission. Do you want it consistent across all those uses? Because I mean, I recall the last conversation we had about this, I don't remember who said it, but the commissioner said with the fitness centers, all they cared about was not seeing the exercise from the windows. And so that's where you all were less specific about what needed to block the fitness from the windows. So I mean,
Yeah, but it's a combination of things. It's blocking the fitness from the windows, but we also don't want that to happen by putting a solid display wall of posters 3 feet back from the windows
yeah,
and not animate the storefront.
okay.
This is Commissioner Chris. The centers I've been in are all product. That's a lot of what they do, and so having product for sale towards the front of the establishment would. Well, there's going to be product for sale in the establishment. They can move it up front, and I take the chairman's comment seriously that we simply don't want it blocked off so that you get a screen through the window and you can't see anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like the general consensus is we'll combine wellness centers and boutique fitness centers, and we'll have a requirement that there must be a retail area of minimum of 15 feet in depth
Hmm.
or 20% of total floor area.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed.
You said or, right?
Or, yeah.
Yeah, or yeah, we just want to prevent, with any one of these smaller shops opening, especially if it's a wellness center or boutique fitness, whatever it is, they're going to be looking to maximize floor area when they're renting prime retail space. It's a high dollar amount per square foot, and we want to avoid them doing so in order to maximize the use of their areas. We don't want them like to throw up a folding shoji screen in front of the storefront windows and call it a day just because you can't see through it and it's going to look like heck. It's not going to look like anything because there's fitness going on behind it that technically would comply. We want them to animate the storefront.
Yep.
And then you want to keep them as separate or the same for business
So
district
I personally think they need to be different in
because
the
of the site
business
plan
zone.
approval?
Yes, because in the business zone, your racket club type use is special permit. But I think a small boutique fitness center, I don't have a better word for it, probably doesn't need a special permit from the commission
Right.
in the business zone.
But is the in the business zone, is the retail frontage requirement still there too?
It is not. It's
Okay,
based on
that's fine.
size.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Or I mean, I guess you could combine it in one and just if it's under a certain amount of square footage, it doesn't need a special permit. If it's over a certain square footage, it could be kicked for a special permit.
I mean, since they have separate definitions, I don't really see the
Okay.
use in
Okay.
combining. But that's just my personal
Yeah.
opinion. So no.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. Does the commission want to vote or are we good?
We can vote.
Everyone's in favor?
All in favor?
Okay.
I don't see hands from Bill, Christina, but I'm assuming the icon was raised somewhere.
Takes you a minute to find that hand.
There it is.
I got mine.
Okay.
Okay, so next in the retail zone, so if you all remember with 112 Main Street, we added in language to allow first floor residential for large buildings in the retail zone. In these edits, that language got deleted because other than that building, I don't know where else in the retail zone you'd be eligible really to fit residential on the first floor. It was flagged by a commissioner to discuss that and make sure, this is on purpose that we're deleting that language. So I don't know what commissioners' thoughts are.
This is Commissioner Chris. The only other building I think that might qualify for that would be the one between Burtis and the telephone exchange building for Frontier on Main Street, which is the red brick one, the older building.
Mhm.
I can see how someone might be able to design that given the dimensions of the building, but that's it. That and the Raymond building, which is 112 Main. I think that's it. At least from my sense. I don't know what other commissioners think.
I mean, I would be, and I recall the discussion right when we did 112 Main was it's okay on the first floor provided there is obviously the retail frontage and these are set back
Right.
a certain distance from the street. So I have no problem with that so long as we, delineate whether it be 20, 30, 40 feet, again, whatever the geometry is, that it cannot be 20 or 30 feet, within a street.
And so just remember if you go that route, it was previously when you put in that language, it was only via special permit. Because of the new housing bill, we lose that discretionary power. So If you allow it on the first floor under certain circumstances, it's allowed. You can't deny it.
But we could always hear it as a special permit like we did with 112.
No,
No?
no, not for housing anymore.
Yeah, under the new state law.
But if we say that it can't be along the street facing portion of the structure, I mean, we've put a safeguard in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm good with that.
What was the depth that we did for
We
112
could
main?
look
Let me
start
pull it up.
just to go back, we can't, per state law, we can't allow it at the street level or we can't deny it at the street level.
We
Neither.
require a special permit.
We can't require a special permit. So we get to set our regulations however we deem fit. It's just there's no discretion of I don't like it in this specific case, so I'm going to deny it.
I
It's
see.
just it's either allowed or it's not allowed.
Yeah, as of right or not.
So then not only do we have to consider where it is in the footprint of the building, meaning, 20, 30, 40 feet back from the front facade, but then also how is it accessible, right? Is it coming through a common corridor like 112 had down the middle to access the two units in the back, or is it coming through a rear entry? Do we get to dictate that, or at least put some qualifier in there?
You could. So just to answer Commissioner Knoll's question, the previous language was retail spaces must be maintained on the street fronts and retail spaces must not be less than 30 feet deep front to back.
Okay.
I think from my personal opinion is if we're talking about two buildings and we're so worried about crafting the regulations to be perfect, why? I don't think we need to include it because if a developer wants to do it that bad, they'll have to come back to us for a text change, and then you have that discretionary power because it's a text change. Make them do the work for us.
But
Sarah,
are we
just
trying to prevent people from coming back with I mean, aren't we fixing our regulations so that we're not inviting text changes?
Yes,
Much as possible.
as much as possible, but
But can I just ask, I mean, how many buildings would this apply to? Like, I'm not a big fan of
Yeah.
having residential on the first floor to begin with. So if the number of buildings that this would apply to is really small, I would suggest we punt it and not include it.
Well,
I
Yeah.
think it opens up a bigger issue if we include it than if we don't include it. And if we're not going to see that much volume of applications come through.
But I
What's
guess
the-
my question is the concern that there's residential on the first floor at all, or that it would, interfere with or detract from the pedestrian experience?
For me, I don't think there should be residential on the first floor. If someone wants to apply to it, we can look at it in the general scope of what a developer's trying to do and make a better decision. But to include it and start allowing residential on the first floor, I mean, think of the bank building.
Mhm.
They could have put residential on the first floor. It changes what someone does with the first floor. And if the idea is that the town wants more residential or more retail, and I think that people take advantage of it, and you're going to see retail get squeezed, and it may change the facade a bit, and you have mailboxes on the front end because there's some housing on the back. I don't know. I don't think it adds any value to the town. So I don't think it should be included.
Sarah, just to clarify, if they're doing the transit community middle housing though, they're allowed to do, if they meet the other area and bulk requirements, they're allowed to do residential on the first floor anyway, correct?
yes, but we wrote the regulations in a way where in existing buildings that's not going to be feasible. They don't meet the setback requirements, and they're
Yeah.
not allowed to convert
they would need a
existing
variance,
buildings.
yeah, technically.
So,
But I think that Tom, I don't want to speak for the commission here at all, but my sense of this when Sarah first sent it to us is this is the retail zone only that we're talking about.
correct.
And that's a very special zone where I would think you would want retail and personal services on the ground floor. I mean, normally residential in a zone like this, if it went in, would go on the second floor. So I think what I'm hearing is you only have two real sites that this is worth debating. I think Tom has a good point.
Well, two real sites that come to mind right now, but all the long and narrow sites along Main Street opposite Town Hall that are nail salons and stretch labs right now, They are deep and they have rear stair access. Those could easily be converted if, if multiple tenants leave and the landlord's looking to reposition that building, they could easily split it in half and put housing in the back half.
And Dan, if they chose to do that, they would have to come in front of us, so we'd be able to look at the overall project versus
Yep.
if we approve it now, we wouldn't have any say over the overall project.
Yeah, agreed. So we leave it out.
Okay. All right. So on this item, leave it out. Okay.
Do we want to vote?
Show of hands. I see Megan.
I'm not a subcommittee member, so can I vote?
Yeah, we're doing it as a full commission.
Okay. Affirmative. I don't know how to raise my hand.
Okay.
Icons somewhere down there, I'm sure.
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, we believe you. All right, number 4.
Yes. So it was the same policy question from the first discussion. Should healthcare professionals be treated as general offices or medical offices? I assume the commission's opinion is the same.
Same.
So it'll be
Agreed.
treated as general.
Show of hands, agreed. Yep, we're there.
Okay. So number 5, this is from me, and sorry, I'm just flipping to that section of the regulations. In this current draft, we have that medical offices under
10,000.
under 10,000 square
10,000.
feet need site plan approval, and then anything between 10,000 square feet and 35,000 square feet would need a special permit. And my question is, for under 10,000 square feet, why site plan versus just zoning permit? This is the business zone, which is designed to allow for slightly more intense usage. 10,000 square feet for a commercial building isn't that large. If the commission's trying to lower their permit load, is a site plan really valuable for medical office under 10,000 square feet? Only in the business zone, not the retail zone.
So wouldn't a medical office at 10,000 square feet in the business zone be something like 67 parking spaces required?
Probably.
That's I just feel like that's my only hesitancy, is that that's a pretty hefty amount of parking.
Right.
And
So what if it's broken down further? What if it's 5,000 square feet and under is a zoning permit, 5,000 to 10,000 is a site plan, 10,000 plus is a special permit?
yeah, that's what I
That
was
would
thinking.
make sense. Yeah.
I could go with that.
Provided they all satisfy the parking requirement.
Yeah, so if for any zoning permit or site plan, they have to meet those
At least per
requirements.
200 square feet. It's the same, regardless of the size of the building. Yeah.
Okay, so how does the commission feel about 5,000 and under being a zoning permit?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then subsequent to that, 5,001 to
10,
10,000 is a special
Site plan.
permit. Or site plan.
Is a
And
site
then
plan, right?
Everything
And then-
larger up until 35,000 square feet, which is we've just capped. You can't have a medical office bigger than 35,000 square feet. That is all a special permit.
Got it.
Right.
Everyone on board with that, raise your hand. We're good.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, Bill got it.
Yes. Okay. Moving on. So thinking about your Burtis Ave developments, your Houston Lane developments, which are in the business zone, those are technically mixed use developments. And they all really have maybe 200 to 400 square feet of office space. That's all they have. So, does the commission want to require a minimum percentage of gross floor area to have to be commercial to be?
Your
Mixed use.
10%, are you suggesting 10% of the total gross area or the gross area of the first floor? The streets.
Yeah, so I just kind of threw that out there. That's
Okay.
not like a legitimate
just wondering.
recommendation. That's up for debate. And I mean, I look to BFJ a little bit for their recommendation, what they've seen elsewhere. My only caveat is I don't know if it makes sense to say, okay, 50% of your first floor needs to be commercial, because if you're in the business zone, if a developer came in and said, I want to do a small office building here and then I want a fully residential building, I don't know if the commission would care per se, as long as they are providing some sort of commercial.
Don't say that, Sarah. We care about everything.
No, Sarah and I had a discussion
Yeah.
on this via email, but what we've seen in some other communities, or most other communities, where you want to have some commercial, obviously, in a mixed-use building, is usually what we see. If it's retail or personal service or even office, the developer is going to look to do that in any case, most cases, on the ground floor, certainly with retail.
Right.
And what we've done is just control the ground floor. And it didn't matter to us what happened above. It could be a mix. In Sarah's case, if somebody wanted to do more office, they still could. But on the first floor, we usually have some requirement of, I mentioned to Sarah, maybe 50% of the ground floor be commercial, retail or personal service or office, that type of thing. So that residential, I'm just thinking of a developer, the market would probably take care of this anyway, but what we find in the marketplace is you're not going to generally mix uses on the second or third floor. They're going to go to resident. They're going to go whatever that developer is. He's a residential developer. He'll do the second and third floor residential.
So
But
how would we tackle that? For example, the Burris Avenue development, where there was street front space. Granted, it was very small. It was a single, retail business storefront, probably the size of a one-car garage. But the majority of that first floor area for the Burris Avenue development was behind that, and it was all parking garage.
That's
Now,
another
when calculating, whether it's 50% or some percentage, how do we maneuver around that type of a project where the majority of the area on the first floor is parking?
yeah, that would create an issue, right? If you had 50%, you would not be able to do. You could be able to do the rest of the area as parking, but not the 50%.
Well,
I'm
we
not
could
wedded
say
to 50%. It might be.
could be 50% of the occupiable space of the first.
Yeah, it could be 50% of the occupiable space. Yeah, the habitable space.
The
Habitable
other
space.
consideration there is if you do require 50% of the ground floor to be commercial, when we did that study to look at the different FAR caps for inclusionary housing, the commercial parking requirements are very high. So what ends up happening is you have a huge amount of parking required to fill 50% ground floor. So then it either has to take up surface parking, or the developer is going to have to do underground, and it's going to limit how many units you get.
Well, Emily, I think we assumed 50% was commercial.
Yeah, and in
So-
in every case, every scenario from 1 FAR, 1.5 or above, none of them would work with surface parking when you did 50%.
No, that's
as
right.
retail.
I'm saying
They were all unfeasible.
that's a different issue, though. I think what we had assumed was no more than 50% in our scenarios. But I think here, what we're talking about is simply what is ideal in the business district. And Sarah was saying maybe 10% of the total gross floor area, and you could do that. I just am commenting that in most of the communities we've worked in, the concern had been in a business district to actually encourage retail services, office, to more be on the ground floor and residential above, so that you have more activity on the street. It doesn't mean somebody could not come in and do something, of a mixture that they wanted. But if you're worried, you could do a smaller percent. You could do at least a third or something like that. But I think it's up to the commission. It's your policy judgment as to what you think is best in a business district. Is is having some businesses on the ground floor in a business district more desirable than in a mixed-use building? Then obviously, the reason I said the marketplace will take care of this in a way. Most developers are not going to put retail on anything but the ground floor. But office could go on a second floor.
Right.
But all we're saying is here that 50% of the ground floor or a third of the ground floor should be commercial.
But I guess to the area, you know, shouldn't we be looking at a frontage requirement instead of maybe an area requirement? Right? Because I think of like the Burness Avenue project, and I wasn't here for that, but I think it's a missed opportunity for ground floor retail activation at any depth. You pick the depth, whether it be 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever. Again, as you say, with the market bears, what a retailer wants in terms of my understanding is they don't want narrow, long spaces. They want, within 20 to 30 feet of the street, so that's where their product can sell the most. And so maybe instead of it being a sheer square footage calculation, it's a frontage calculation. Obviously, you leave room for a lobby. You leave, 25%, 20% of the frontage for the lobby for the residential, component. But otherwise, there is a, mandatory, 75% commercial retail space, up to the bottom of the second floor.
Yeah, it could be a frontage, Eric. Sometimes, particularly in a form-based code, we've used frontage as a frontage requirement rather than a gross square footage requirement. And you could do that too. I think the objective is similar, that if you require a certain percentage of retail or business on the ground floor, is to get a frontage that's commercial. And you will get that. Or you could do it simply by frontage, and then, let the marketplace dictate the length.
Or do you do both frontage and area?
You could do both.
Because I fear in an area alone, you think of, you do an office space you do residential amenity space in the front, and then you do an office kind of in the middle of the building, and then from a outside pedestrian perspective, it's a doctor's office in the middle of the building that you go down a corridor to, and that's how you get your compliance. It's not really affecting kind of the pedestrian experience.
Yeah. You could do both. You could do a frontage requirement as well as a ground floor square footage requirement.
I guess it's just a bit of a, policy consideration for the commission. Do you want to be designing the projects this specifically? And do you want to incentivize or require really retail space in the business zone? What is the intent of the business zone? Is that, if this is where the market's going and this is what you think is best, then that, makes sense. But what are you trying to accomplish in this zone versus the retail zone, which is, where Elm Street is? I don't know. Do we need more retail space in town?
Yeah, Sarah, I would say, I would try to rephrase the question for the committee a little bit. I wouldn't limit it to retail. I would say all commercial uses, including office, personal service, any commercial use. That's what we've normally done in other, for the very reason you're saying. We're very afraid of retail being, you don't want to be too specific as to retail, because you could find a developer could find there's not much of a retail market. But if he can put in, or she can put in, personal services or office on the ground floor, for instance, and you just called it commercial, any commercial use, retail, personal service, office, I think that's one image of your business district. If you have no requirement, then it could be, you could put residential also. I presume residential will go really in the business district on the upper floors in any case. That's the market.
So I support the hybrid. I like the concept of protecting the frontage. My point of view is that if you give an inch, they'll take it, and you can never get it back. And so if our goal here is to protect the first floor and the business zone, so it could be services, I would say we have to protect it, because if we don't, I think it'll be used for something we can't get back at a later date.
Yep. It'll set a precedent that we can't walk back from.
Yep.
Okay, so then what are we thinking?
Is it too bold to go 100% frontage?
Yes, I think it is. You got to have, let's say,
You need residential
yeah,
lobby space.
you want to have a nice entrance. If there's residential above, you want to have an entrance, from the front to that. You want to have a lobby space. And if there's structured parking of any type in the back, you need to get access. I would say that's why we've normally picked 50%, but I'm not trying to sell 50%. It's a percentage you're comfortable with, but you need to leave the developer a little bit of flexibility. We're not trying to design the building, right? We want to leave them some flexibility, but we've seen 50% as a.
If you were to go
you
with
should get
Eric's
that.
just number, and I know, Eric, I don't know if you had science behind it, the 75%, 15 and 25%. If you were to do that, if they needed more, they can always come for approval, correct?
I mean, they wouldn't be able to come for approval because again, all of this is as of right now. They either meet the requirement or they don't. There's no discretion at the commission anymore. It's just whatever you say, that's what they have to meet. If they meet it, they get their approval.
I just know they do that in New York. It's 25% on most major commercial thoroughfares. For a new building going up today, 25% of it can be lobby and the rest 75 on, ground floor transparency streets have to be retail. And
75%
there's
has
no
to be
requirement
retail.
in terms of area.
Eric, 75% has to be retail?
Well, when I say retail, I mean personal service,
commercial,
retail,
yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
commercial
And
service,
I'm
yeah.
sorry
We
when I
need
say retail, I
commercial,
mean retail, but
retail,
commercial
restaurant,
generally.
yeah,
Right.
personal service, office.
Well, so just to be clear, would it be any use that's permitted in the business zone? So in theory, if they wanted to have a nursery school on the first floor, is that okay? Is it any permitted use that's in this table?
Hmm.
I'm sure nursery school would work given state laws on that,
Yeah, I mean, that was just the first one my eye went to.
But, it's a
But I
fair
just,
point.
we have to be intentional about the language. Is it whatever is permitted in the business zone?
I think what you have now is whatever is permitted in the business zone.
Yeah.
Right? In a mixed use development.
Yeah, I mean, that is what we currently have.
Yeah, the general thing I've seen in, again, other communities is what you want on your ground floor in a business zone is businesses.
Right.
That, not be too blunt about it. And you want to encourage that. And if you have some requirement for it, maybe it is 75% or it's 50%. If it's 50%, it just leaves the developer more discretion to put in some other permitted use other than commercial. There's not too many of those. I theoretically could be those other uses, Sarah, as you said.
I mean, I think maybe 50% makes more sense than say 75, just because of the walkable. It's not as, in the business zone, it's not as walked as say the retail zone. So
Are you talking about the frontage requirement or the coverage?
the frontage requirement.
Yeah.
Because, right, I mean, when I think of the New York City model, obviously you have a lot of pedestrian traffic. The business zone here does not have as much pedestrian traffic as even say the retail zone. So, I get Frank's point that 50 might be more appropriate here, particularly in the business zone where there is less foot traffic.
Yeah, and so the other decision is it both? Is it the frontage and the gross square footage of the ground floor? Or, whatever, I think it's a policy call there. I think your frontage though is going, if it's, we find most retail, and that may not be the case in New Canaan, most of the retail people we work with, we find that you do want depth of 50 or 60 feet if you can get it to support the retail. Same with personal services. So. again, the easiest one is might be what Eric said, is frontage. And the market's gonna, a retail person is not gonna come in and do 50% frontage, and then only do 20 foot depth. They're normally gonna do greater depth anyway.
Right. Well, we can leave the depth up to them.
Yeah,
They would need to manipulate that based on the site and
right.
the configuration of the building.
Yeah.
I like the 50%, the suggestion of street frontage. I think that helps a lot in terms of pushing the, animation of the street front.
So
Yeah.
at what depth for the 50% of street frontage?
I don't know that you have, well, it's up to you. Again, you don't,
I mean, I think you need a depth if you're just gonna
Yeah.
say 50% of the
Otherwise,
street
someone can
frontage.
fake a
Just gonna
front.
do a
Do
bunch
5
of
feet,
windows.
We have 30 feet elsewhere.
Yeah, so we had 30 feet from the 112 main project.
It's 15, yeah, and 15 feet. Obviously, the buildings are smaller, but in the retail zone, as we mentioned before, for the boutique fitness centers and wellness centers is 15 feet in depth. Those are smaller.
I think
Wow.
that's just for the retail
Yeah,
component.
that's
Yeah, I
For the
would-
Yeah,
retail.
Yeah,
very
that's just
small.
for retail.
So
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
very small. You
So-
don't,
I mean, 30 feet is probably also very small, but I don't know how, like, I don't think we want to make it unnecessarily large and you end up with vacant.
yeah, if you say at least 30, and most retailers are gonna want greater depth, it doesn't prohibit the greater depth. You're just
Yeah.
mandating the 30 feet. So I think that's safe, but.
I vote
Okay, so
40.
40.
Just to be different.
As we say, most of the retail economists we're working with say that retailers want 50 to 70 feet in depth. That's their ideal depth.
Yeah, and they can achieve that depending on the landlord and the developer and however they
Yeah.
want to split that up.
Yeah. So I would think 40 feet is safe, in other words.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're saying 50% of street frontage with 40-foot depth.
Yes.
Yep.
I would probably also add in that this is for the first level of finished space, just in the event there's lower level parking or anything like that, just so it's
For the
clear.
first level above grade. Right? Not like a basement space, right? I don't want.
Yeah, no, first level above grade of finished space.
Okay.
Otherwise known as the first floor.
Yeah.
It's the street floor.
Okay.
Good.
So that takes care of number 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Show of hands in support of that. We're good.
Okay. Another can of worms that I do think is relevant now with what we've just decided. So this comment came from a developer that I just had a meeting with about a potential project, but I thought it was a good point. In the business zone, if stores are providing ground floor retail, should they be granted a 0-foot front setback or a 0-foot side setback similar to the retail zone?
In the business zone.
Yes. If you're trying to achieve more of what Elm Street has, more of what Forest Street has, you need 0 setbacks. And if a developer is providing retail and you're trying to promote an active street front, in theory, you would want the buildings close to the street and potentially closer together.
But that could stand to hurt us in certain areas like along Pine Street and Elm Street, where a builder or developer could build right to the property line.
Yeah, I had.
Does that hurt you though? Because then the parking's in the back. They have, they're capped at FAR, they're capped at height. I don't think being close to the street is necessarily hurting the town.
No, but think about the streetscape on both of those roads. Pine Street, for example, the only one, I think the only two buildings that are right at the property line or close to it is the Merrill Lynch building and the old Oxygen building right up against the sidewalk. Everything else is set back.
Yeah, we had
Yes,
mentioned
but
in the current business zones, am I right on this, Sarah, that there is currently a 5-foot setback and a 6-foot front setback in business C.
yes,
So,
and there might actually in business A right now be a provision where via special permit you can get a 0-foot front setback.
yeah. So the business zones basically now have a 5-foot, basically a 5-foot to 6-foot setback.
Right.
And we actually, in our proposal to you, which we jointly developed, but the proposal, I think we also proposed a 5-foot setback, and I think we had proposed 10-foot on the side yards.
Yep.
That was really to get some reasonable space between buildings in the business zone. This is not the retail zone now. This is just the business.
Business zone, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I was concerned with is fire access.
Yep.
So that's, I don't know, we had thought that, we had actually thought that what's proposed, in our last discussions of a 5-foot front yard in the business zones and a 10-foot side yard made sense. But this is up to, this is up to the commission.
Well, Sarah, you're saying somebody came and wanted to do a 0-foot.
Yeah, I mean and I can be honest about it. It was someone interested in the Cross and Vitti Street properties that are for sale, and they were it was the property that was on kind of the corner of like Vitti and Cherry or Cross and Cherry, and they were like, I mean, that corner would be the perfect spot to have a building right at the corner with a little coffee shop, but because of the regs, I have to be 5 to 10 feet back, which I mean is what it is, but it was just the question was brought up, why 5 feet? Why 10 feet? There are definitely cases where it could make sense to do 0. Especially now if you're requiring 50% of the first floor on mixed use has to be commercial.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could serve as a great, I guess the question is, what do people want the future development pattern to look like in those areas? But I would, what we have now is a fairly automobile oriented pattern in the business zone in some places, not all of it. But if the future is more pedestrian oriented and, we expand out from Main and Elm a little bit to potentially more pedestrian oriented uses in the business zone, then I think this offers a nice incentive to developers who want to do that.
Whatever you set from I think a building perspective, what I would expect in the business zone, where you'll be able to do 3 stories if you do inclusionary housing anyway. Whatever you set as that setback, if that's going to be the whole building, it's not going to just be retail. That's 0. Most developers, the cost of development of building a building, they'll then be allowed to build a building at the street line, and I think that creates a different. That's going to be a 3-story building built at the street line with no setback, and there's no ability then to do any landscaping in front of the building, or
Right.
in a restaurant, let's say, they could put out more seating in front of the restaurant because they have that extra 5 feet. So I'm not sure. You can tell from what I'm the way I'm speaking, I don't agree with that particular developer who talked to Sarah. I think that would change over time your business zone. And I've seen this happen in some other places, where the sidewalk area, the setback from the curb to the building, when the building goes much higher than 2 stories, that can matter over time. I think you're safer with a 5-foot setback, which is what we recommended actually originally, and that's what you have now. So you're not taking away anything from anybody, any rights at all. But that's, again, it's your call. But I do think you would over time change the built character in terms of its height relationship to street width in the business zone.
Yeah, I mean,
I think-
I'm just looking at the views of Cherry Street over by Bankwell and the pharmacy, and all of them are set back from the property line with some, 5-foot buffer or some dimensional buffer of planting between the sidewalk and the building. And I know it's a wide street down there, but it does help to, open up that or reduce the tunnel effect that, typical urban areas have. And we have that obviously on Main and on Elm Street, and that's there and that's okay. But I'm not sure we would want to replicate that throughout the broader business area that stretches east, west, and south.
So when you say
Yeah.
5 feet, are you saying a minimum 5 feet, or
Yes.
Yeah, so
so you could do 10 if you wanted, or
What's
Yes.
proposed now is
15 if
a
you want.
5-foot minimum and a maximum, I think, Sarah, correct me, and a
Yes,
maximum
that's
of
correct,
10.
yeah.
a
Yeah,
maximum
minimum
what,
of
sorry?
5,
10.
maximum of 10.
So I mean, we're splitting hairs over 5 feet. So if the commission wants to leave it as is, that's fine. I don't think it.
I would leave it the way it is.
Do we want to vote on that?
Sure. Show of hands to leave it the way it is. We're good.
Good, okay.
Okay, last thing for the business article.
4.5B.
Yes,
Height
so-
exceptions for structures. Yeah, that one.
Yes, exactly. So we have, and this is already in the regulations, there's an exception that municipal buildings, museums, schools can go up to 3 stories instead of 2.5 stories, but we don't have a height limit. And just for being proper in our regulations and not, essentially be granting variances, we should have a maximum height. I did some
Agreed.
research. The library and town hall are 50 feet. So I would,
That's their total building height or building
that's their
height?
total building height.
Total-
So
okay.
peak is, I would probably do 50 feet to be safe.
Why not 40?
The library zone that you all approved is 50 feet. So I would be consistent with what is already on the books for buildings that exist already.
Well, we approved it for the library zone. It's 50 feet to the top of the highest point on the library building, which is, I'm sure everyone's aware of the site, and is set back quite far from the perimeter of the site footprint and the building footprint. What I'm concerned about is going to 50 feet in the business zone and hitting areas like, sorry, I'm jumping around between different screens here. Going to 50 feet along Cherry Street, for example. That's going to be a significantly bigger building than anything that's there now.
So again, it's only for schools, municipal facilities, and then museum type uses. So, I mean, and also all of those uses are special permit uses. So you have design review, discretion. You have your special permit discretion. This isn't just, a random office building could be 50 feet.
All right.
It's also capped at 3 stories.
Yeah.
Also, so it couldn't exceed the 3 stories.
Uh-huh.
How
My
tall
own
is the
thinking-
town hall?
Sorry.
My own thinking on this is that I don't see town hall changing at all. I can't think of any other public buildings except for a firehouse. Maybe if something changes there, the ship has sailed on the police station. It's really schools, I think, and especially with talk of North School and so forth, and perhaps expanding a school, it could be vertical. And so this may be a rehab of a current school. And so there may be some applicability there. So
Good point.
I mean, but I would recommend, keep it contextual with what exists for schools and museums. They are, public buildings are not, I don't want to use landmarks, but they're institutions of the town that people know, that people go to, that people see, and that, there's existing context for it. So I don't see why we would say, oh, those buildings are too big. You know, if we've approved that as our public institutions for, you know, generations.
So stick to the 50 feet.
Yeah, if that's what is existing, I don't see.
I'll triple check, but I'm 99% sure it's 50 feet. And if it's lower, I'll have it lower for the final draft. But
Can I just ask the on Park Street, there's the museum that's up by the parking lot.
yep,
Yeah.
If someone were to take that building down, does that
That's-
then mean
that
they
is
can
in
build?
the no, that is in the residential zone.
Okay.
That is a non-conforming use in the B red
Right.
zone,
Got
so
it.
it would
Okay.
not apply. And that's also in the historic district. So
Okay.
any other.
Is there any other building you can see where someone could abuse the right and take something down so they can get something else there and just claim it as a museum type building?
No, I mean, it would all have to go through special permit approval of the commission, and you still have your discretion on that stuff. You know, the state hasn't taken that right away.
And the 50 feet would include, if we did 50 feet, that would include any screening on any HVAC equipment on the roof?
Yes, we have standards pertaining to that in the business zone that apply to all buildings.
Does this apply to doesn't apply to churches?
I was actually just going to add, I mean, as I'm thinking about it, it's places of assembly, if a church wanted to push it, they probably could argue that they would need to be treated the same as other places of assembly. So it could apply to churches potentially. But again, only churches in the business zone.
The way it's written now is just schools, public libraries, municipal buildings, and museums. But you're
Yes.
saying they could argue that they should be considered.
I think if they had a good lawyer, maybe. Yeah.
Do churches have a different regulation, or are we just silent on that?
Churches have to meet the other standards in the business zone.
Yeah, they're not included in this exception.
There's only one church in the business zone, so.
I think you're pretty safe in that these are public institutions, other than a museum case. I mean, they're talking about town hall, the library, and schools. So,
Okay. So stick to the 50 feet.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing. Show of hands. Good. Unanimous.
Alrighty. So now jumping over to parking. For the parking needs assessment on the commercial properties, this came up at the public hearing. You know, about whether we should include a parking needs assessment for commercial uses, for changes of use. It was brought up by a member of the public that for a small business, the cost of paying for a parking needs assessment is going to be steep, probably, you know, $10,000, $15,000. So not clear if this regulation will actually be helpful for any businesses. So, you know, just thoughts on that. Should we keep it? Should we not? Any other discussion?
I mean, just to give some background on it, where we usually find this to be helpful to a developer, although I don't think they saw it that way at the table on parking that I was at, is that, you know, normally new business comes in, they've got to meet the required parking. And this would give them, if they had some reason for not meeting it, such as they were going to do shared parking, unreserved parking, you know, things like that within the development, and could make a case then that they didn't need all of the required parking spots, then that gave that would give you the ability to approve a lower parking requirement. So the idea of this was to make it a little bit give a sort of mechanism by which you could actually, where you had instances of, you know, office, residential, retail together, parking was going to be not reserved for anybody. It's going to be shared parking and shared between uses. and they could show that on a study, then they could get smaller parking. I think at least at my table anyway, there were a couple of people who were saying, well, look, we have a small site and we can't pay. They asked directly, how much money would it cost? I gave a range. And I think Sarah's used the range here of 5 to 15K. It depends on the complexity of the study, but the purpose of the study was to allow them to get less parking, not more. And, you know, that so
the way we've been operating in PNC, we don't really care what it costs them, right? And that applies to all previous applicants, all current applicants. If we're looking for a parking evaluation or a traffic study, if it's going to cost you, I'm sorry it's going to cost you, but it's part of our regulations, and we want to know. One of the main factors of needing a parking assessment for a new business in town was, number one, to determine if they can satisfy, and if they can't, to your point, Frank, how do we get them to be a business in town and satisfy or mitigate the parking issue requirement? One of the key tools we've used in the past is parking fee in lieu. So if they can't satisfy, like we did the Merrill Lynch building, they had on the corner of Park and Pine Street, right? They had underground parking below the building. They had some parking behind them that was shared with the Oxygen building or whatever the business is that's in there now. So they had a limited number of parking spots. They argued at the time that they could use, because of the hours that they were operating, that they could use some of the street parking. And part of the agreement was that there was a parking fee in lieu that parking fee in lieu goes towards technically our big slush fund that was supposed to fund an eventual, multi-level parking deck somewhere here in town.
right.
I don't think we should get rid of that. I think a parking needs assessment is critical in this town, especially with how tight parking is in this town.
But it'll never be used, right? Then the whole concept we should just do away with. If you want to put something in place, a regulation in place that you want people to actually use, I think the reality is that you have to understand the economics behind it. And the economics behind it is that in a small space, a tenant who's going to be the one who's going for this application, it's not going to be the landlord. I mean, I think the goal of kind of when I brought up this issue that you could do a change of use and not have to, modify the building to repark it was to prevent against the vacancies, right? We don't have it now, luckily, great, but the market could turn in 5 years and then the vacancies could go up. And then even John said it John Engel said it at one of the meetings. It's like, well, I had a prospective tenant, but I told him what the parking, requirement was for your use. We don't have that spaces. And they left and they said, okay, no, I'm out. Right. And so then that's, another 4 months, 6 months, a year, depending on the market where a space sits vacant. And so the whole concept behind not requiring people to go from a building that's been built and require them to retrofit it is to avoid the vacancies and to allow, and in my perspective is, look, a Dunkin' Donuts can come in and pay the $15,000. A big national brand can come in and pay the $15,000 to do the study. But what's great about New Canaan is that there's not a lot of that, right? And we have maintaining the mom and pops. And that's kind of what you don't see in, a Westport or in some other places, right? And that to make this requirement stay is going to say, well, that's the type of user that we're going to, they could pay for it and they could, get that determination that the parking's not needed. But they're the one who's going to pay for it, not a startup, not a new company of somebody that's local or somebody that's, a mom and pop, type business.
Yeah, Eric, I think there's two issues here, if I may. There's two dot points under this one. One is the parking needs assessment. And I thought what that could mean, I don't know, is also a new developer coming in. He's doing shared parking. He's doing, that kind of developer, $5,000 to him on a study like that, or 10,000 or 15, given the cost of new development is it's a cost, but it's not a great one.
Right.
But the second dot point, I think, is what you're speaking to now, and that is, you got a change of, you got an existing building and you
Mhm.
got a change of use in that building, say from a regular office space to a medical
Restaurant.
office space, yeah, or whatever. That change of use requires more parking under your current code. There was the real issue at the table I was at on parking
Mhm.
was they made the point, hey, we've got a small tenant here. They're not going to pay that amount of money, so they may walk away. So I think there's two different, correct me if this is not the case, Sarah, there's two different issues
Yeah,
on it.
so it's
We're talking about the second,
Right.
right?
yeah, so I mean it's a little off just because that parking needs assessment, which is 6.5 or 6.2 FB or F1B. That language is specific that it's in the event of a change of use in an existing commercial building. So it's not for
Right.
new commercial development. That's where the things that Dan was talking about, the fee in lieu, the shared use, that all still
Right.
exists for new development. And we're keeping that as it currently exists. It's really just this parking needs assessment was specifically for changes of use.
Yeah, okay,
And I
so
think
this,
what Commissioner Knowles is getting at is, I mean, if a small tenant isn't going to pay this, should we even have this? And then the intent, is to try to not perpetuate vacancies in town. And then
Because
should we
people aren't
just,
going to retrofit their building. It's just they're not going to do it. They're going to wall. And but look, if it's a big national brand that it has the financial backing to do it, yeah, they'll pay the $15,000 and get the parking needs study, and maybe it comes out in their favor and they can prove it and then they can get it. But is that then do you just want basically a setup that's who your best potential tenants are? I don't think that's what New Canaan makes New Canaan great, but that is how the regulation would function, I think, in reality.
Currently, there is no out, right? Besides getting a parking variance. So this would be providing an option that doesn't currently exist for this parking needs assessment. Um, so Sarah, correct, if a tenant came in now, they wouldn't have this option. They would need to get a variance in the case that there is a hardship, but this would be at least one way to provide them, even though it's expensive or cost prohibitive, one way to provide them another option for the space.
so I mean, I would say it's definitely another option that might be a little easier, but I mean the shared use reduction, the permanent reduction, those are also tools that we currently have that a new tenant could employ.
well,
And again, we're
the other option I thought of at my table was, I think you could interpret the way we've written the new study, the parking study, Eric, is just the way you have, and that is that it's demanding enough. It looks like all the points we've said, could add up to a 15-20 page study. The other option I can see is to allow a small person to come in to Sarah with a 1 or 2 page type of very small letter type of approach to this to get at that cost issue. But they'd have to still make a showing that, why can they do this? At my table anyway, on parking, one of them said, well, it's easy. We know that there's parking in such and such spot. It's adjacent to us. Well, if you can make that case and you can come before Sarah and make that case. And if we're clear that the study could be very small study, the way the study's written now, I can see where everybody interpreted it. That's why they said, how much is this thing going to cost? And, if the cost were, say, almost nothing, that they wrote it themselves, they talked to they got, a couple hours time from a traffic engineer, they might be able to come in for $1,000 study. If they could do that, that might be different. But I do agree that, after listening to the table I was at, that this was clearly an issue for them. But I think a middle ground might be to soften the type of study we were saying was needed. Now, I don't know, Sarah, whether you feel we can do that, but it depends on how you define the study. and how much detail you need for it.
And just to be clear, we're talking about the business zone, not the retail zone, because
Correct. There's
Yeah,
no
it's-
parking
there's no
requirement.
parking requirement in the retail zone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. So change of use, for example, on Elm or on South Ave, there's no parking requirement. We can just go through that procedurally. There's no issue with losing a tenant there. We're talking, to Eric's concern, we're talking about business zone tenants or developers.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, for example, the hotel that's coming in, they combine two existing, which is now the business zone, right?
Yeah.
It was previously a separate business zone, but it's now part of the general business zone. They could have come before us and not have to prove anything in terms of their parking if they didn't satisfy the count for a hotel, right? Because it's an existing condition. We would have had to, let's say they did their calculations, and based on the, for a hotel and so much square feet per parking spot, they did their calculations and they needed 90 spots, but they only had 80 spots. They wouldn't have to do anything to make up for that because we would be granting them, a grandfather based on an existing condition of the building, even though there's a change of use.
And the alternative is to keep it as is in a deteriorating office building. That's kind of my argument, right? Just to play devil's advocate, right? We continue with the status quo and we don't, allow for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I
But
was
it,
at Mr. Fish's table, and I think I was the one who used the example that I had a physical therapist. It was 10 years ago, but physical therapist came in, she said, I want to rent this 2,000 feet or 1,000 feet. And I said, I'm sorry, you're called medical, and therefore you need 6 parking spaces according to town hall. And she said, but I'm just a single physical therapist. I look at, I treat patients one at a time, for an hour each. I use 1 parking space. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that's the requirement. In the future, Mr. Fish and I realized she would have to order a $15,000 parking study in order to, kind of change that rule. And what we were saying, and the other people around our table were saying, is you should be able to go make your case to Sarah and say, this is how I use the space. This is how many patients I see. This is the parking intensity of my business.
Yeah, but we all know how that goes too. Applicants lie, right? They'll come before planning and zoning or building department and tell you they're going to use it one way, and then 3 months later they have 12 people trying to find a parking spot to get in there for a group therapy session. It happens.
True, but getting a parking study and getting approved does not prevent them from lying or changing their business model after the fact anyway. Parking studies solves nothing except discourages people from, even investigating.
Sarah, how would this affect, let's say, some of the large office buildings we have, such as Forest and Locust or Grove and Elm? Let's say they were converted to something else from general office to whatever.
So, I mean,
Apartments.
we'll use the hotel as an example just because I don't want to use residential as an example because that's a totally different animal. So let's say another one of the large office buildings wanted to convert to a hotel. If they weren't able to meet the hotel requirements, they could submit this parking needs assessment to say that there's not going to be a negative impact on the street and public parking capacity because of this new use, and they have to provide these logical reasons as to why it won't cause an issue, versus today, if you don't meet the requirement, you can pay us $10,000 per space that you're not providing, or you can get a special permit. And you still have to submit some sort of parking assessment, but it's much more vague. It's a special permit, so it's a public hearing. And there's a 5 space maximum on all of these. of reduction.
So at least, John, the study we were talking about, and I admit that the study we we're talking about could cost money, would be less burdensome. Question is whether you want to require it at all, I guess, in a change of use situation. And I think there were some people at the table who were saying don't require it at all, which I
Well, we
think
weren't
Eric, you
saying
made.
required. I think we were giving it as an option.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. You're right. We were giving it as an option. That's right. For a change of use, if a person couldn't meet if let's say going from office to medical office, which requires more parking spaces, if you didn't have those spaces, then you had the option of doing such a study. That's what this change of use thing was about.
Yeah, but perhaps there's also some since we wrote the parking needs assessment language specifically for the Connecticut state law change and specifically for these larger new residential developments, maybe what's coming through here is that for these change of use for businesses, we need a different word or a different language for the type of study that needs to be done or that could be done.
Well, this is what's currently, I don't know if everyone has it up, but this is what's currently required for the change of use. And up above it says that it should be prepared by a professional traffic engineer or qualified traffic consultant. And this is what's required.
Yeah, and what I'm responding to here is I really think there's three options. One, not require it at all. Two, stay with this. But I think there's an in-between option for changes of use. And that is something that's simpler than this and where you may not need to do all of these things. It's a more of a simplified type of study. And I think it could be written that way. Emily, you're right. We did because we took a lot of things out of Connecticut state law. It increased the price of this. It increased the difficulty of doing it because you got to really just to hire a professional engineer. You're going to start with $4,000 or $5,000 anyway. But
if I may offer in the middle recommendation, I mean, I don't actually think any of the things that we're requiring in the commercial parking needs assessment, I don't think they're particularly technical as I'm reading through them. So I
agree.
I think for the middle housing or the housing parking needs assessment, we need it to be done by a qualified traffic professional just because we don't want a developer submitting a napkin saying that this is a parking needs assessment. But maybe for the change of use commercial one, maybe we don't have that requirement that, maybe the landlord or even the tenant themselves can submit this data. I mean, it would require a little bit of homework, but as I'm reading through this, I don't think it's particularly complicated data to obtain.
Yeah, and
Would
that's
you?
you said it better than I did, Sarah. I think that's where I was trying to suggest this middle ground of not requiring a traffic engineer, quite frankly, and not, requiring just evidence that somebody might be able to do on a 1 or 2 page submission.
I support that 100%. If you take the engineer out, I'm completely on board with them providing on the record, in writing, what they're asking for, what their reasoning is, what their evidence is. It goes in the record, it's in the file. I mean, recently I had a dentist come and ask for, space in the building, and I thought, this is going to be a more intense parking requirement. So what I guess I'm saying is the landlord himself is your biggest check and balance on a changing of use in his building. And in my case, I said, this dentist will disrupt all the financial and insurance and architects, use of the building. It'll disrupt that because it's a change of use that they're not comfortable with. And so, I turned him down. We're going to rely on our landlords, I think, to be that first line of defense, not a parking engineer always from out of town.
Do you still want it to be submitted to the commission as part of a site plan application, or would this go just to Sarah?
Doesn't matter to me if we take an engineer out of it.
I almost wonder if it should be tied to the use. Like if the use only requires a zoning permit, it should go to me. If the use requires a site plan, it should go to the commission. Same
That
with
might be a good way to handle it.
special permit, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're coming here anyway, then
yeah, agreed.
Well, that may
yeah,
be
I
a
mean,
good
I
way
guess
to
if the language
move
can be
forward.
watered down, to provides evidence sufficient to demonstrate XYZ, and we don't specifically require the engineer, I think that would be better.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's what, 7 things that we require. It's all
They're all pretty,
Yes.
yeah, like a
they're
description of whether or not
straightforward.
it's going to
Yeah.
be reserved parking,
Well, do they have to
if-
do counts? Is that one of them?
Not traffic counts.
peak hour anticipated number of employees and patrons. That's probably pretty easy for someone to have an idea of how many people would be visiting at a time. Current available on-site parking. The one thing that sounds a little bit technical is peak demand variations. That's kind of,
I would
I mean,
take
I'm not-
that out.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that might
See, that's
confuse
right out of
people.
the traffic
Yeah.
studies.
But other than that, we can take another look at it, but it's pretty much in layman's terms.
Yeah, just because people don't know most people don't know what peak demand is. Like,
Yes, no, understood,
so-
yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you do that, that does make things easier for a change of use in a business zone and change of business uses.
So just to be clear, to make sure we're all on the same page, nothing is changing for the parking needs assessment relating to residential uses. For the commercial parking needs assessment for changes of use, we would remove the requirement for it to be prepared by a professional traffic engineer or qualified traffic consultant. We remove the peak demand variations language, and then the approval process is based on the use itself.
Agreed. All in support, show hands.
Right?
We're there.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing in the parking. So parking reduction special permit, which has been on the books for a while. And this is section 62E2, permanent site use reduction. It'll in all business zones except for business B, it used to allow up to 25% parking reduction, but then in business B, it allowed up to a 40% parking reduction. So obviously we're going down to one business zone. We think it should go down to 25% since we've already lowered the parking standards. Just wanted to make sure that's okay with the commission.
So sorry, you're saying reduce the
So we have to
maximum.
pick either 25% as the max for this permanent site use reduction special permit, or 40%, which was on the books for business B.
Business B or business D?
B as in boy.
So the Cross and Vidi area.
Yeah, I assume that was added in since you were trying to incentivize medical office, and the medical office parking requirements were pretty intense.
Yeah.
But in the new parking regs, we are slightly reducing those. That's why I thought, as Sarah said, that the 25% that's a significant reduction. Is probably safe because each of the ITE standards is a little less or the same as the standards you now have. So none of them increase your parking standards. So we're tightening up we're being more liberal. We're with the parking standard now. So I don't see people ordinarily needing a 40% reduction. That's a huge reduction in parking.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
And this is just for commercial use or residential use, or?
This is just for commercial use.
Okay.
I'm okay with 25%, 40
Yeah,
people.
I am too.
Okay.
Show of hands.
25.
We're good.
Great. Okay, now switching to inclusionary zoning. First and foremost, so this is in the dimensional standards if you provide, the affordable units. We have a standard for maximum total building height. And, in doing this review, I realized we don't have a maximum building height requirement. So remember in New Canaan, we regulate total building height, which is the peak of the roof, and then we also we regulate building height, which is the midpoint.
Of the upper roof structure.
Yes. And so by not having a maximum building height definition, you're basically saying an inclusionary zoning development could have a flat roof up to
Right.
50 feet tall in the business zone and up to 45 feet tall in the retail zone. I assume this was an oversight from when this was written long ago. Hasn't been an issue yet, but I would recommend adding in a building height requirement.
I have a question.
Sure.
It came up once before, but I pointed out that the real building height, once you added all the air conditioners and equipment on top of the flat roof, came out to like 57 feet, and the applicant corrected me and said it doesn't count. And I said, but I can see it. And he says, yeah, but it doesn't count legally. So I would like to include the equipment as part of the total building height, but you're probably going to tell me I'm not allowed.
Yeah, we can't
So-
do that.
We would have to change a lot of our regs because
Right.
right now, and this is existing in the business zone, we have a certain height exception for mechanical equipment.
Right.
And John, almost all other towns have the same exceptions. Yeah, they copied one another, so. I
You
think
do
you-
have screening as
Yeah.
a
Yeah, you don't want to,
yeah, screening. You want to
yeah.
Well, when I'm king, all the towns are going to come and do it our way. If I can see it, it counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
No,
I mean,
it-
John, for your purposes then, in this scenario, because we basically allowed a 10-foot vertical height for mechanical equipment. So basically, right now in the retail zone, you could have a flat roof building that's 45 feet tall, and then you could have another 10 feet of mechanical equipment. It does have to be screened, but you're looking at 55 feet then, once you include the mechanical equipment.
It just
Sarah-
doesn't seem to be an advantage, and it feels like it should be for those buildings that hide it in the attic, right? Now they're penalized for an attic, but if I build a flat roof structure and I put equipment on top of my flat roof, it doesn't count. But if I build an attic, well, that counts as part of my building height. I get that we can't solve this tonight, but that seems like a fundamental unfairness that penalizes building sloping roofs in snowy Connecticut to hide the equipment.
Well, Sarah, did you have something in mind here?
Yes,
for the
I mean, it's
inclusionary- yeah.
typically what I've heard, from various people I've worked with who are designing buildings in town. 5 feet for building height, it should be 5 feet less than the total building height for,
So for the maximum building height, 5 feet less than the total.
yep.
And that's what we did
So-
in the business and retail zone too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It is.
So
That
we,
would-
to be consistent.
that would make sense, I think.
Any questions or issues?
So retail would now be 45 feet in building height and 50 feet in 45 in total building height
40
and
in maximum
40
building
in
height.
40 in maximum building height.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Correct.
That's just for inclusionary, right? If it's market rate, it's
Yes,
a
yes.
total
We
building.
have different
Yeah.
standards for
Yeah.
commercial.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone in favor of that? Show hands. Unanimous.
Great. Okay. So then right down in the next section of inclusionary zoning, there is a section about parking, and ways to modify parking. I think we should be removing all of that language and just referring to the parking needs assessment language. At this point, just the state has tied our hands. This is the new process. I don't want to have any contradictory language.
I mean, to your point, HB 8002 as of July 1st is going to negate any parking requirements for inclusionary housing, inclusionary zoning,
Yeah.
correct?
So exactly. So I don't know if we even need to have this section since it's in the parking section. There aren't any special rules for inclusionary zoning at this point. So maybe we don't even need to have this section.
I agree. I think it needs to go away.
Okay. So just delete section 4, which is parking.
Yes. I do have a question though that's not on here about inclusionary zoning.
Okay, great. We can do that after we're done with this one.
Okay.
So for this one, should we, if we're deferring to HB 8002, should we have some language in there deferring to all applicable state regulations for inclusionary zoning? Meaning
No.
there's always a chance something will change in the next year in Hartford of, parking requirements.
I don't think so because we had to write this whole parking needs assessment language. So I don't want to refer to a bill and then
No, I'm not referring to a
Okay.
bill. I'm just saying put something in there referring to state regulations.
I would not because I could see a savvy lawyer trying to say that that means our parking needs assessment doesn't apply. We defer to the specific state statute language and
Got it.
yeah. So we could refer to our parking needs assessment section for varying parking
Okay.
requirements, but I wouldn't reference statute.
Okay.
Okay.
So remove entirely or reference the parking needs assessment.
Aren't you safer, Sarah, on just referring to the parking needs assessment?
I don't have an opinion one way or another.
Yeah.
I could see an argument that this section is meant to be about regulations unique to inclusionary zoning, and the
Mhm.
parking needs assessment isn't unique to
Okay.
inclusionary zoning.
If you remove all parking from here, then anyone who's looking for the parking requirements would have to go to the parking section anyways.
Yeah.
They would
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Okay.
So I would say remove entirely, but I'm open to the commission's preference.
I'd say remove entirely.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Show of hands. Got it. Everyone except Christina.
Oh, Christina.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, Krista, what's your bonus question on inclusionary?
Bonus questions.
All right. So right now, if you're using right now to do residential in the commercial zones, you have to, right now to do multifamily, basically anywhere, you have to come for a special permit. I understand that's going away. So in downtown and wherever else, you're going to be able to do that by zoning permit, right?
Summary review, which is basically a site plan.
Site plan. So pretty much the whole inclusionary zoning regulation was predicated on the fact that we were going to be seeing these as a special permit. Now we may not be seeing these as a special permit because the type of development doesn't trigger a special permit. So I think that if they're using the bonuses, like the height and whatever, we should require a special permit. I don't know if we're allowed to do that, but I just worry about giving away the bonuses without any sort of discretionary review on our part.
I have a feeling I haven't asked this specific question to the town attorneys, but I would assume they're going to tell us that that's not allowed.
Yeah, the new definition, I guess, is summary review.
Yeah.
I've not been clear on exactly. It seems similar to site plan approval, but Sarah, I'm not sure on the legal interpretation of what summary review is. Does
It's
it go-
definitely not, it's not a special permit. And I mean,
No, definitely not a special permit.
Yeah,
They wanted to avoid special permits, but does
it
it
can be.
only go to you or does it
No, so
also-
It can go to the commission for site plan review, as long as it's understood and clear that site plan is just yes, if it meets our regulations, it's getting approved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we proposed a definition of summary review that's any approvals procedure in which a site plan application is submitted to the commission and it's reviewed by the commission to confirm it's compliant with all zoning standards and that public health won't be negatively impacted.
Yeah, but I think what Commissioner Nielsen is suggesting is the bonuses specifically would require a special permit, which I think then we run into issues of, does that come across like the commission's granting a variance? And again, I don't know legally.
I think the issue is also that all of your developments over 5 units require inclusionary zoning except for the middle transit community or middle housing. So if you did a special permit there, you would be making discretionary decisions on all multifamily.
Only if they wanted the bonuses. So
So
they
you can't build, right now you can't build a, I don't know, a 15 unit development in New Canaan without using inclusionary, right? Doesn't inclusionary apply to any development over 5?
Right, but I think there's a difference between providing the inclusionary zone and inclusionary units at 15% of the total project and getting a height increase, getting a coverage decrease. Those types of things to me are above and beyond. That's what I'm calling the bonus. So you have to do the affordable piece. That's the required part. But I'm saying, can we require a special permit for these bonuses of decreased coverage, decreased landscaping, increased height? Because I think that's where, I mean,
Okay, so just to be clear, for the multifamily zone and the apartment zone, it's still special permit. This
right.
is only for the business zones where we now have to have summary review.
But I think that's probably where it matters most.
Okay,
We've only had one project and it was in the business zone. And the
Yeah.
reason I think it worked was, for better or worse, because we're able to enter into this sort of discretionary negotiation with the developer about, okay, well, yes, maybe we can let you go up to whatever height, but in exchange we want blah blah, like that was the whole game that this was predicated on, and now that game is gone. And I'm asking the commission, are you guys okay with that? Are you comfortable with, as long as somebody's following everything in here, they can go up to that height and you don't really have a ton of control over the horse trading that we used to do? Because it makes me a little uncomfortable as the person who wrote this. I didn't write it.
It makes me
I also
uncomfortable
think-
at 15% affordable.
Do we think
That makes
that,
me
I mean,
uncomfortable.
a developer
Too
would
low.
actually develop something like that if it requires affordable, if they're not getting the bonuses? Like the bonus is there to, offset the affordable.
Cost of the affordable.
Yeah,
The cost
no,
of the
it
affordable.
it is, but if you don't want to, in my scenario that I'm putting out there, which I guess Sarah's saying she has to run past the attorneys, it's, if you don't want to deal with that, if you want the quicker, easier process, which will save you time and money, don't deal with the bonuses, right? Now, you may be saying, rightly so, that you can't afford to build the project without the bonuses. Well, then you have to afford then to come before us for a special permit.
Yeah. I don't know if I would think Sarah should get a legal opinion on this. My sense of this is that nothing will happen. I mean, I would get a legal opinion on it from
Yeah,
your
I mean,
attorneys.
would
I
have-
think the answer from them, I don't want to predict it, but given the sense of
I'm
state
predicting
law-
it's going to be no. Just
Yeah, so I didn't want
I
to say
will be
that, but I
that.
think that's what they're going to say also, that the answer is no.
But if
That
you
you-
lose control, right? If the if you lose the discretionary control of the bulk bonuses, can you? And I'm just posing this because I don't know. Can you then get a trade-off for greater affordability? Right? Can you then? And I don't open a new can of worms, right? But if we're going to be pigeonholed into not being able to, as Krista said, review the bulk waivers that were given and they're just site plan approval if they do inclusionary, can you then increase the percentage of, affordability so you're getting something for the town in return?
We did slightly, if you look at like the example we provided in the past presentation.
Right. Can you do it more?
It is,
Right?
there is like one more.
If you're losing
I don't
control,
think it's
then
gonna
there's gotta
get
be some
built
balance.
at a higher inclusionary
It won't, yeah,
percentage.
yeah.
And we
Well,
also
Eric,
put a
you-
cap
yeah.
on the FAR, which limits the bulk further, and that was kind of to have a clear expectation of what the bulk of the building is going to look like.
Well, we're also proposing to raise the fee in lieu, so that would also be more expensive for people who don't choose to build the affordable units. Would give the town's affordable housing trust more money, but would also probably incentivize people to build the units themselves rather than pay the fee in lieu.
So then do we decrease what the bonus options are? Like, have we given away are we comfortable with what we've potentially given away without any hands on the reins, for lack of a better phrase? I mean, I wrote it, like I said, with the intention that, this was all going to be up for discussion when they came before us for a special permit. And now it's not up for discussion. And so maybe we want to pull back on how much we're giving away.
Okay. In the height, though, you were fairly comfortable with the 3-story, 35 feet, right?
Is that what the bonus
So
is?
no, the
I thought the
bonus
bonus was
is
more.
3.5, 45 feet in the
3.5, 35 feet, right?
45.
45.
Yeah, 45 feet.
Right. So, Dan, not to put you on the spot, but I specifically remember when Burtis Avenue came before us, you had reservations about how tall that project was going to be. And I don't know how you feel now that it's under construction, but we had a lot of back and forth with the developer on that project that we won't, I think, have if it's a summary review, whatever the heck that means. So are you comfortable with the height of Burtis Avenue without the negotiation that we had?
No, I think negotiation is key.
Well, we can't have it.
Mitigate.
You can't get it. So how tall do you want the buildings to be if you can't get it?
Burtis Avenue, you all know it. I mean, Burtis Avenue slopes down. So where are we measuring that maximum height? Are we going about, around average grade? Because down at Cherry Street, it's almost a full story lower than it is halfway up the block, where the building is lower than the New Balance building in front of it. So you could argue, well, it's contextually appropriate because it's lower than the building next to it. But you go to Cherry Street and all of a sudden you've got a 4-story building.
So I think
Very
we
subjective.
could throw a whole open a can of worms at this late juncture tonight, but I guess the next step.
But you did it.
Sorry, guys.
I think the simple answer is to get your legal counsel to give an opinion, because I agree with Sarah is
I would prefer to plan for the assumption that I'm going to be told no when I ask, because if we just say, okay, we'll see what the attorney says, we have to have regulations with good to go for Monday, or else we have to delay the public hearing. And we have this July 1 clock going ahead. So, if I'm told no.
So, Sarah, do the inclusionary regulations have to be part of that?
July 1 mixed use is allowed as of right. And so is middle housing. So I think
we lose out on the affordable units if we haven't updated this by then.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, repeat that, Krista?
So on July 1, mixed use units and residential units are allowed by right. So if we haven't updated our inclusionary regulations by then, we potentially lose out on the units, even if we leave what we have on the books. It's still set.
Can we come back later and amend it?
It wouldn't be enforceable.
Could we come back later and amend it as part of our efforts on the residential side? And
Yeah,
take
we
another
could come
stab.
back and amend it, but then we're operating with unenforceable inclusionary zoning regulations, and then anyone can come in with a mixed use development and we have, an issue.
So, okay, well then just to take the most conservative approach, which I'm not sure I agree with, but I'll just throw it out there. What if we just take the bonuses out for now until we figure out if we're comfortable letting those come in under summary review? It
So
may make projects unfinancially feasible.
I was about to say, what if you scale them back? So, right now in the retail zone, just for a normal building, you're allowed 2.5 stories at 35 feet. So what if you allow an extra half story? So you could have 3 full stories in the retail zone up to 40 feet tall. And then in the business zone, same thing, 3 stories, but it could be 45 feet tall. What if you jog it back?
So half story instead of a full story bonus.
Yeah. And then lower the height bonus.
What would
And
So
also remember that part of our task when we came in was to, work on the inclusionary zoning to make it work because applications weren't coming in. And so we also want to keep in mind that like the purpose of inclusionary zoning is to incentivize developers to build affordable housing, and these kinds of bonuses are what incentivize them to do that.
yeah, I think the commission's policy may have changed a little bit now that they don't have that discussion.
Right.
But
And I mean, to be
Sure.
like, if we'd had 20 projects already, then I think we'd have a much better sense of what motivates developers to build versus doesn't. And especially if it had been discretionary up until this point, we could say, well, when we tried to go to 40 feet tall, they said no. But we have a case study of one. So, to say what works or doesn't work is still very arbitrary.
So I mean, you also, and it's not under inclusionary, but you have the 2 Forest Street developments. You have Houston Lane, and I mean those are all 3 story buildings. So it's slightly more of a case study. So I mean maybe 3.5 is excessive.
Well, if you went to, Sarah, if you went to 3, I just following your logic.
Yeah.
What would you do as a height? You'd want to have,
I would do 40 feet for
Yeah.
the retail zone, maybe 45 for the business zone.
yeah, I was gonna say at least, 45 in the business zone would make sense.
And I mean, for reference for the commission, in the 4 acre zone, you're allowed to have a 45-foot tall house. So
Yeah.
you allow 45-foot tall buildings in town.
So you're saying, okay.
So the maximum building height itself, would that be
35 then.
5? Got it. And then this would be 35 here too.
Or it would be 40, it would be
40 and then 45.
yeah.
So do people feel more comfortable with this then?
Stories 35.
I can live with it, I think.
Okay, and so I mean tomorrow I will call the town attorney to get an opinion. If I'm told yes, we can have the bonuses specifically be a special permit, we'll keep the previous numbers we had and we'll preserve it as a special permit. But if I'm told no, we'll move forward with these changes. Is that the preference?
I think those are the only options we've talked about. So
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, those are the options.
And so we've taken out, as we just discussed, the parking bonus where they can reduce the amount of parking.
Correct. We removed the parking section from here and they would just refer to the regular parking guidelines.
So there is no parking bonus then. There's no
Correct.
incentive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless
'Cause
they
it-
do the parking needs assessment.
Because the only other two things in here is bonuses were coverage and landscaped area, which both went up or down by 10%.
But those don't apply to the retail and business zone too. Those are just the ones.
Okay. All right. Yep. Then that's the only thing. Yes, I can live with that, but I can't speak for everyone else.
I can live with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I actually have a bonus inclusionary zoning question that one of your fellow commissioners brought to me today. I won't throw them under the bus unless they want to volunteer themselves. But with fee and lieu, because again, we're losing, you're losing your discretion. So in theory, if a developer, let's say they want to build, with the density bonuses or whatever, it's going to be like 20 market rate and they have to provide 3 affordable. If they want to pay the fee in lieu, they can do that as of right. You can't say, no, we want you to provide the affordable units. So is the commission comfortable with that, or do you only want to see fee in lieu on partial units?
I mean, I can tell you that the intention was that it was an either or
Okay.
choice.
Okay.
But if you
Then-
want to change that now, that's fine, but that's
No.
what was intended.
Okay, so
Stay with-
it's either or. And
It's
then-
either or.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All
well,
right.
easy peasy then.
Move on to definitions.
Yes, and this should be quick. So if everyone has the bank definitions in front of them, there was one that BFJ wrote, and then there was one that a commissioner wrote. We just need to decide which one you would prefer to go with.
This is stemming from the whole Merrill Lynch move. Is it? It's a question.
No, I mean, this is just stemming from we were reviewing all of our definitions. We thought the bank needed tweaking, and then, BFJ did one, and then a commissioner voluntarily brought their own definition.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty similar. I think we took the first one. I believe we based it off of a surrounding town, maybe Greenwich, and tweaked it.
So I think the first one gets to providing retail banking. It's got a customer facing business, as opposed to the second one doesn't require that it has,
Retail, yeah.
the retail component. So I would probably favor the first one. I'm assuming something like the Merrill Lynch or a hedge fund or anything like that would qualify as office.
It would qualify as office, yeah.
Office, yeah.
Yeah.
Merrill Lynch, they said they were a bank.
Well, because at the time we didn't allow office in whatever zone that is on the ground floor. So they were, playing word games.
If you want to go with the first one, just to be technically correct, you probably should say bank, thrift, savings bank, savings loan association, or credit union, which are often more distinctions than differences. But technically, if you're a credit union, you wouldn't qualify because you're not a bank. So it's more comprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to call out the specific agencies, or would you prefer to just say a competent federal or state
You don't
authority?
need to say you don't need to just say competent federal or state agency. They're only that can issue licenses.
Mm-hmm.
That covers it. I don't think you need to specify the OCC or the Fed or something like that, or state banking group.
Just
That's
make sure you get
too
rid
deep
of
in the weeds.
the N of the agency and agency of the.
Oops.
By a competent agency of the federal government or a state or federal government. State or competent federal state authority gets it.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm gonna-
that's good.
I'm
That's good.
gonna leave it before we.
It's merge the
Yeah.
two is what I'm advocating.
Yes, yeah, I think that gets at it. And so just to clarify, the commission does want to say that it primarily provides retail banking services. I don't know if the word primarily is too prescriptive.
I drop primarily. Most any financial banking institution or similar really has to provide retail banking services. Only a couple really oddball licenses that do the other things. So to get too deep in the weeds, just say provides retail banking services. Does it?
Well, wait a minute. We just took out the word primarily.
Mhm.
Did you mean that?
That's what John just,
You're
that's what I just
okay with
asked
that,
John.
John?
Because there's no way you can really measure this. What is it, by footfall or what? It's just
Yeah, there is no way you can measure it. You're right. Not
they
really.
provide retail banking services. So
Yeah. Well, I could raise the same question. I don't I hate to do this. This is fine the way it is. What by the way, the word competent federal or state authority, are there incompetent ones, or is this a legal term, or
legal term.
Incompetent federal state authorities? You kidding?
well, what as again, you can't
It's
measure that
competence
either.
or authority to issue licenses.
I mean, would it be an authorized? Would that be a more
Or
technical?
yeah, or
Yeah.
You say authorized.
qualified or
Authorized might be a bit better.
Authorized federal or state agency, we can say.
Federal or state agency.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Authority.
Great.
Agency, authority, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going
And
to
then
go out
Sarah-
on a limb and make a guess that it was John Kriz who had opinions about this language.
I had an opinion on this.
Before the
I've been
meeting.
doing this for 40
All
years.
right.
Then the other
Okay.
one.
Final.
Yeah, Sarah, we have a couple things at the end too, just
Yeah.
to talk about.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
But so final thing in this list of items to discuss, real estate offices.
Yeah.
I think we've had a lot of discussion on this, but they are mentioned in our retail definition and in our office definition. And obviously there are retail offices on Elm Street. I don't know how commissioners feel about that. Do we want it in both definitions? Do people feel it's appropriate in only one? Open to thoughts.
So I think we need to choose one, and I think it comes down to, do we want to continue to allow real estate offices on the ground floor? And if so, then they belong in the retail. And if we don't, then they belong in the office definition.
I'm okay with leaving them in retail.
That's fine.
I just want to point out one thing. There was a period of time when they were sprouting up on Elm Street, and we enacted like an ordinance and said like no more. And so any of the ones that were there, Brotherhood and Higley on the one corner, Ravis on the other corner, they were there because they were grandfathered. So when the agency moved into Barbara Cleary's Realty Guild space, it was because that had been continuously a real estate office since the beginning of time. I want to point out that today, real estate offices don't have that, what Dan likes to call activated storefront. Many of these offices do not have any people in them. They are just billboards for a lot of lit up signs in the windows. So if the objective of the commission is an activated retail zone, we should think hard about how real estate offices are not that active anymore. There's no longer a realtor on duty sitting at the front desk greeting people as they walk in, inquiring about the houses in the window. And I hate to say it because I am a realtor, Mr. Fish, but I have to point out that my industry just changed in the last 5 years, and our regs don't really take that into consideration.
Amen. I agree. I think they do not generate any foot traffic. There are billboards, and I think they should be treated as offices. My preference is to get them out of grade retail.
And so, I mean, if you went that route, where there are existing retail offices or real estate offices in the retail zone, they would be grandfathered in. So if the agency closed and a different real estate office wanted to open in that space, they could do that. So what is there is grandfathered.
So leave it that
Because
way.
you won't get any more, right?
Yeah,
You won't get any
any
more.
more.
You're maintaining the status quo is what's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah,
So then
that's
that would
fine.
mean we switch it to only being in the office definition and we remove it from the retail definition.
That's fine.
Yep.
Let's hear the current definition is real in the office as or real estate brokers. Is there another way that is brokers?
Should be consistent.
Well, yeah, this would be the only place that it's listed since it's being removed from retail.
Yeah.
I just don't know if brokers is the right. Maybe John Engel, you have is it
Real estate agency.
agency or other?
So it's a bunch of salespeople whose licenses are held by a broker. So I guess it's a brokerage.
Brokerage, okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay, great. So should we move on, Frank, to the quickly
Yeah,
the
if you
public
could
hearing
go to
presentation?
the
Or do we just want to really quickly, is there anything other commissioners need to bring up before we move on? we're sticking a pin in these regs at this point.
Is this like a wedding? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, it is in
is.
terms of July 1.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Sarah, we can also, we'll send
TikTok.
you these revised ones by tomorrow. That way you have time to take another look. And if anyone else has any remaining comments before the Friday deadline.
Okay. Why don't you go briefly to the agenda then, just to,
Okay, sorry. I actually do have one other thing.
oh, you do,
Just
okay,
to keep in mind,
yeah.
my assistant zoning inspector is the iPhone that's listed, and he's texting me and doesn't want to speak. So I'm calling you out, Stephen. But he just pointed out that with this non-conforming item for real estate offices, if we're putting that in the general office definition, we're technically saying that if William Ravis left on the corner of Elm and Main, that then in theory, like an architect could go move into that space because it's just general office. So we would need to maybe write specific language that says that is specifically grandfathered for real estate offices, not just general office.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
I thought it was assumed. I mean, I'm surprised that you say an architect could move in there.
So it's just
Because it's office space.
yeah, because it's general office. So any general office could then move into that real estate space. So I just want to
Why you're saying that the grandfathering extends to the next business, even if it's not the same kind of business?
because it's not a change of use. We just general office is general office. Whether you're a real estate office or an architect or an accountant, you're general office. That's
Wow,
not a
okay.
change of use.
Did not realize that.
Where
Possible.
in the regs would you like that to go, Sarah? I feel like it wouldn't really make sense in the definitions.
Maybe it's in the retail zone in the use. It's I mean,
use for
and
office?
we should maybe just specifically call out retail offices and just say that it's permitted only
As a
in
retail office or
spaces
any
where
conforming use.
it existed as of July 1, 2026.
Call out real estate office as its own use
Yeah.
or real
Real
estate
estate
brokerage.
brokerage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
real
do we-
estate
Real
brokerage.
estate
Yeah, sorry.
brokerage.
Do we need a definition for that, or is that self-explanatory?
I mean, I
It's
think
like you don't
I
like
would
to-
think it's self-explanatory.
yeah, I
Okay,
think it's
just checking.
How are they identified in their C of Os right now?
they probably don't have COs.
Yeah,
And that's as of right with the zoning permit would be the
Yes,
brokerage.
as long as
yeah.
only in locations that were existing as of July 1, 2026.
Okay.
Okay. So briefly we have Frank, do you want to talk through briefly
Yeah, let's.
I have
talk
up the
about-
presentation, but do you want to talk through briefly the agenda for the
Yeah,
public
why don't you
hearing?
go to the agenda? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me give me 1 second.
And I think this will only take a couple of minutes. But we did want to talk about the public hearing. And so Suzanne, yeah, if you could.
Yeah, it's just loading.
Yes, loading the agenda.
Okay. Sharing my screen.
Yeah. Just on item 3, Dan, we presume you as chairman, you opened the meeting, the hearing.
Mhm.
The question we had is whether you want we've got two types of PowerPoint. Well, first, whether you want a brief presentation at the public hearing. It's a hearing, so it's different than the workshop. But we thought some type of introduction to it. Either we've done 2 options for you of a public hearing. One has about 6 slides and the other has about 15 slides. The first one with 6 slides just gives the public, the timeline, what this is about. But it doesn't go into the details it doesn't go into the details of the zoning, assuming that they've had a chance to read it. And then it ends with a slide that says how the how you would run the public hearing. That is, that it's about comments. It's not about back and forth discussion. It's about comments or statements. Could you keep them within 3 minutes? That type of thing.
Yeah, I saw both of them, and I'm concerned about the abbreviated one just not having enough
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 meat,
there because you're going to have people showing up to this meeting who may have not
Mhm.
been at the public workshop, may not have been paying attention at any other meetings we may have had. So you'll
So
have
do the
people
longer
coming in.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have people coming in completely raw to this presentation, and it'd be better to give them a little more background.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Okay, great. So that was the question we had because we want to just be prepared for that longer presentation, which won't take that long. It'll only take,
No.
we've abbreviated it slightly. It can be done in 20 minutes. And so
Yeah,
that'll
probably
be,
even quicker than that. Yep.
yeah. Yeah. And the last slide in it is, I don't know if you saw,
Here, I can-
Suzanne, can you bring up the last slide in both presentations is the same thing, but I want to make sure that yeah, it's just to hear. There it is, Dan. You may want to say more here. We
Yeah.
just said state your name. Just
Yep.
try to stay within 3 minutes.
Yeah.
We usually
can
say
read-
name and address if you want to just.
Yeah, it's name
Yes.
and address.
Yep.
We'll state that at the conclusion of your presentation before we take public comment.
Right. Right. Good. Good. Okay.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
And just so you know, we've been monitoring the question and answer forum online. We sent Sarah, we've only gotten 2 questions so far, but as they continue to come in before the hearing, we'll make sure we pass them along.
Okay.
Were they both by John Chris?
I was about
names
to
were
say the same
optional.
thing.
Names
They
were
were-
optional.
They were all about the traffic mitigation districts, so.
Traffic Mitigation District.
Okay.
So Sarah,
So,
we'll send you these revised regs tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know that I think was it John Engel also sent over some other minor edits, so all of those will be in the next round.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll get
I
those
think
to
we
you
didn't-
then. Yeah, if
Okay.
you could do it tomorrow, Suzanne, fine. But otherwise, by Friday, you need them because you've got to.
Yeah, we'll get them to you
Get
tomorrow. That
things
way you
in
have
place.
it. You
Yeah.
have a day to
Yeah.
look at them
That's
before
good.
we get proposed.
That's good.
And then we didn't really talk about it. I don't have any edits or anything like that. I just want to bring it up. Everyone's all set on the downtown zoning map and we're going with one traffic mitigation district for this go around. Just want to make sure we're good with that.
Yep.
Good.
I think we are.
Okay. Very good.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I hope that George, I hope you got everything.
A little bit of overload.
Boy, if you're coming in here brand new, it's a little detailed. So,
Yeah.
but I think we're in good shape. Yeah.
And just to reiterate, the June 2nd will be the public hearing, right?
Yes.
Yes, we provided a flyer
Yep.
to Sarah. Yeah.
And then the debrief we're going to have 2 days later on the 4th.
On the 4th. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that going to be a Zoom debrief?
Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, I keep trying to caveat if, only 3 people come to speak at the public hearing or something like that, we may be able to debrief that night.
Yeah.
And won't need the 4th, but
That
in
would
the
be
event
good.
we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, the final thing, once we're done with BFJs, we need to just approve the minutes tonight before we adjourn.
Okay.
We can.
Okay, I'm just going to say before you leave that, or I leave, I hope you have a good public hearing. I'm going to be away, so both Suzanne and Emily are going to attend.
Hopefully you're going somewhere fun and sunny.
Yes, it's called Paris.
Ah,
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, yeah,
enjoy.
Yes.
That'll be great.
yeah.
Great time of year to be there. So back to the minutes. We have minutes from the March 10th meeting, the April 9th meeting, and the April 21st meeting. Does anyone have any changes or modifications to any of those meeting minutes? Okay, show of hands for approval. Approved. We're good on the minutes.
Great.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye.